Left versus right political debates are not designed to resolve political differences, let alone create consensus. In fact, they're not designed at all. They're a construct that has evolved over time as part of the power structure to keep you hooked on drama, and more recently, to sell you the fantasy that you can change things through a party political system which remains true only within a very narrow bandwidth of choice. The main argument used to prop up the idea of a left versus right divide, that of workers pitted against merciless capital and management, is breaking down. To understand why the idea of labour versus capital is completely out of date, here's a thought experiment. Human beings don't do all the work in a modern economy. That's not in dispute. Whether it's forklifts instead of muscles or bookkeeping software instead of brain power and counting on fingers, the economy already has a lot of labour that is done by machines, right? You're not going to find it easy selling your services of industrial trench digging if all you've got is a shovel. Now, you'd be crazy if you thought the economy could ever be fully automated in this way. Someone needs to drive that digger, for now, but you'd have to be equally crazy to say that automation of the economy is currently zero. So if it's not zero and it's not 100%, the only bit that's not clear is how automated an economy is. And we don't even need to speculate about AI or robot butlers. Not now. But doing it now just accelerates driverless technology and implementation, like photographers demanding higher pay to develop film in darkrooms during the introduction of digital cameras. Even just raising the minimum wage will have this effect in many sectors. It doesn't mean we shouldn't, but it's not the silver bullet we're being sold. Staying on the left for a moment, a job guarantee could provide full employment by simply inventing jobs. Yes, including ones that are not provided by the private sector but should be, like more aged care and green infrastructure. But it can't increase pay too much beyond the equivalent private sector jobs unless you want the government to very quickly become almost the only employer of humans in the economy. And if you think that's a great idea, here's the other side of the coin. The private sector becomes just all the profitable software and automated machinery and processes that are too embedded in the economy to nationalise, owned by a handful of very wealthy people selling it as services to the government. The big ambition from those on the left who support this seems to be anyone who wants an entry-level job can have one. It'd be progress for sure, but it's not exactly an inspiring vision. Exhaustion from long hours while still barely making ends meet is the problem that most of the population experience. Telling them they're lucky to have a job is pretty damn insulting. And when one of my gung-ho right-wing business mates says creative destruction is what drives innovation and prosperity, I tell them they have no empathy for anyone who's just had their career turned into an app and who they expect will just magically retrain themselves into software developers or YouTubers, not me just yet, to earn a meal ticket while using a lifetime of hard-earned savings to stay alive in the meantime. Or they simply take a lower paid alternative. In fact, if you can get government policy to help speed this up, we can all apparently be more prosperous sooner.
There's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment.
The left and the right are simply talking in loops about a 20th century industrial model that doesn't exist anymore. We need to start getting serious about how to protect all human beings from an economic system that is changing, including how do we create incentives to live simpler lives that compel people less often to do pointless make work or commuting for a meal ticket that simply increases CO2 emissions. By separating labour from income to a degree and pre-distributing money into the economy through people, we could pinch from both the left and the right in a new political consensus. Work out the level that neither discourages work too much or creates hyperactive busyness, and give working people the breathing room they need to consider their own futures. This is too nuanced a debate for party politics, which is why the party political system needs to die, or at least get seriously reformed. Hours worked cannot compete with compounding capital that aims to strip costs like labour from its bottom line, and private capital cannot be used to make the products and services we need even at lower cost through innovation, if there's not enough people with decent pay to buy them. And that's where a UBI, or universal base dividend, is the sword that cuts the Gordian knot and changes the entire economic landscape. It does not solve every problem, but it does connect people on both the left and the right because it creates a degree of economic freedom. Now, a universal dividend or UBI will drive inflation if it's not accompanied by both tax reform and an increase in productive capacity. But as explained, productivity increases do not come from human labour alone. So simply making the workforce run at 100% employment to give everyone an income is not relevant if your aim is to increase productive capacity. That can be done and would likely be done by companies expanding their output with more machinery rather than people. But increases in pay through a job guarantee or minimum wage hikes do not immunise the economy from inflation without tax reform either. More money in the hands of workers is a good thing, but it's also inflationary if the work being done is not as productive as the job guarantee brochure or enhanced public jobs in green infrastructure or care for the elderly would suggest. The exact form that a new political and economic consensus could take may well include a job guarantee or enhanced worker protections, but don't kid yourself. It will take years to implement, and there are people hurting now. Here's an idea to bring together supporters of a job guarantee or enhanced worker protections and those of a UBI. We currently work the longest hours in history, apart from the sweatshops of the early Industrial Revolution, while at the same time having the greatest labour-saving technology in history by many times over. It makes no sense other than we are doing make work to some degree. Whether it's because we're using the work ethic as a replacement for religion, or just because we can't stand the emptiness of not being busy, is a problem that can be solved by giving people the ability to contribute some time in their week that isn't connected to a paycheck. If you think everyone needs to be coerced to do that, well, you'll need to defend that. But why would we not try to strike a balance between things that need to be done, the place is a mess and there's plenty to do, and the freedom to do your own thing beyond the economics of survival? If a job guarantee, or even just public sector jobs, were used to set an example, we could spearhead a shorter working week and a UBI top-up to decompress us all from the toxic long hours culture that has mindlessly built up over the years. The coalition of support for it would be much bigger than the sum of its parts. We need a new consensus beyond the old left and right suspicions, but we can't get there thinking the 21st century is just a rerun of the 20th century any more than steam engines could have been bolted into the wings of Kitty Hawk. Let's get out from underneath the shadow of the 20th century. Let's dump the left versus right thinking that is crippling us. If you like these ideas, hit subscribe. You'll find more like it in my book, Beyond the Survival Economy by Dave Folks over on Amazon, or just Google it. Now, check out this video on how a surprising reform to our tax system could make it fit for the 21st century so that it's simple and small and makes managing inflation easier.